CBSN political contributor and RealClearPolitics national political reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns joins me now. So, Caitlin, give me your reaction to the president's most recent statement in which he addresses the criticism. He initially did not call out white supremacy and KKK.
Right.
He does so clearly in this speech. Is this enough to tamp down the criticism of that initial statement he made after Charlottesville?
Well, there was a variety of different criticisms. You had those from Democrats, you had some from Republicans, you had all sorts of different groups criticizing the president's response for this over the weekend. So it might satisfy some, including Republican critics of this administration, but I don't anticipate that it will satisfy other critics who will probably say too little, too late. There are a lot of critics who say that the president has been very eager and willing and quick to call things out as he sees them, call things out by name, and this is an instance where he deliberately chose not to do so over the weekend.
And he did so only after 24 hours of pressure, namely and mostly from Republican senators who basically came out and said this is domestic terrorism. This is not the party of the KKK.
Right, exactly. The president really had no support outside the White House for his response over the weekend to this. You saw Republican lawmakers coming out pretty forcefully condemning the attacks as white supremacy and using them by name. Also, some critical of the president. You had Cory Gardner, who is in charge of the Republican senator from Colorado, in charge of the Senate campaign arm, responsible for getting Republican senators elected, asking the president to take a tougher stance here. So you're right to point out that it's been over 24 hours with all of this public pressure that he came out now. And there will continue to be criticism, I think, of what he will do moving forward. This is an issue, of course, that is not going away. I think a lot of eyes will be watching to see how he handles these events in the future.
And I think you're right. I think part of the reason why it's not going to go away is because a neo-Nazi website, after the president made his initial comments on Saturday, basically praised Trump's comments. He said he did not attack us. And it reminded me of when Trump was on the campaign trail and people would talk about the dog whistles that he would give out to white nationalists. They are part of his political base. Does he, in a more direct way, need to say, you're not under the umbrella, you're not under the tent?
Well, we saw time and time over again on the campaign trail, the president, the now president, but then candidate, was reluctant to come out as forcefully as others might have. Remember during the campaign when David Duke kind of resurfaced, and then candidate Trump said, I don't know who David Duke is, even though he was on record years earlier condemning him and condemning any Republican who united with him. And so you saw his opponents, Republican opponents, during the campaign criticize him, wanting to sever these ties from whatever ties there are from the Republican Party and these extremist groups.
Is there still a battle for the heart of the Republican Party?
Sure.
And I want to point out, actually, a retweet that you put out, Caitlin, and this is actually going viral. It was a speech that was made by Republican Bob Dole 20 years ago, in which he got on the stage and he said in that speech that the Republican Party is broad and inclusive. He also said in that speech he showed racists and bigots the door. How badly does the Republican Party need a leader who stands up and says that right now?
Well, interestingly enough, there were lots of Republican critics over the course of this past campaign condemning Donald Trump for not disavowing these types of groups. And Donald Trump was elected anyway. He was the Republican nominee. But I also don't think it's fair to cast the Republican Party as connected with these groups. You have had a lot of Republicans
Steve Bannon, who is a chief strategist, though, in the White House, was the head of Breitbart, which is an alt-right platform that Steve Bannon has said publicly, this is a gathering place for alt-right movement.
Right, and that was certainly an inflection point during the campaign, and you saw Hillary Clinton come out with a speech denouncing the alt-right and actually saying to Republicans, I know this doesn't represent the Republican Party and the Republican brand. And so what's interesting here is that the president is always kind of slow to these kinds of things and elicits criticism because of that. And also in these times of crisis, in these really fraught, tense times, people look to presidential leadership, and you heard from Republicans and Democrats that was missing over the weekend.
Yeah, they look for moral leadership.
Right.
Caitlin Huey-Burns, thanks so much.
Thank you.